Now, as I said, this is the third talk, and it was just to refresh our memory a little bit. The series, the mini-series, was called A Summary of Gnostic Teachings, and I mentioned that the way I came by this much of this material. Would somebody be so kind and looked at my Gnosticism book? The one just said Gnosticism, is it there? Or did we sell them all last time?
At the top.
Okay, if you'll be so kind. And we'll put it back, and then you can have it at a discount. In any event, in my book Gnosticism, which is the last commercially published book that I wrote, there is a portion, not terribly long, it's from page 187 to page 189, wherein I tried to give a whole number of one-sentence definitions relating to various aspects of Gnosticism. The reason I put that particular chapter together was that there was a lot of complaints, a lot of complaining in the part of various publications that wherever you picked up a book or a magazine, it said Gnosticism, but that nobody defined it, and that if everything was Gnosticism, then nothing was Gnosticism. And this kind of criticism annoyed me. So I said, okay, guys, I am going to give you, I don't know what it is, about 48 points which define the various Gnostic teachings, and that is what we did this time. So I should probably open it up in case we're quoting from those to page 187. 187, wow. Okay, here we are. 67. Here we are, 187. I'll just do a very inelegant way of storing this and leave it open there. And as you may recall, and I'll just run through this very, very fast. We started with the reply, let us say, that the Gnostic tradition gives to how we got here into our present condition, and maybe also how everything else got here. In other words, what could be called the Gnostic creation myth. And of course that is greatly different from the creation myth of Genesis, and probably the principal feature and the principal difference being that the Gnostic creation myth is in its theory is monistic. Now, what does monistic mean? Monos means one, and so that it declares that everything that is has come from one source and shares, therefore, in many ways, a common nature. This is very clearly explicated by the great Madame Blavatsky in her Secret Doctrine, but we can find expressions of it in various other places also. So, while that is true, there in the finished product of the emanational sequences, emanation meaning something that pours forth, emaneo, and so that means that an essence, a transcendental substance, poured forth from its own mysterious and immaterial habitat and created a vast structure wherein everything is composed of that that transcendental material, but at the same time still has many, many differentiated portions. I like to look at it, and I don't claim any great clairvoyant justification for that. And sort of like a great big pyramid-like structure. Goes up, and at the very top is the source. And from that source, out of time and out of place, there poured an essence. And this essence constellated itself at various levels in various ways. So that when you ever have, as maybe some of us did, and I know others who did, when you have sort of a paranormal perception of this emanational structure, then you will agree with me that it is fabulous. And it contains, it contains thousands and 100,000s and more of different levels of reality. Angels and archangels and souls that have incarnated and souls that will continue to incarnate, and animal souls and plant souls, and on and on and on and on, until you come sort of to the bottom, and there what you find is us. That's where we are, the earth, and we wandering around on this earth and wandering, trying to find out why we're here. Well, that's understandable. In any event, the human is very much in the most material, the lower sphere of this vast structure, because the rest of it is all spiritual. That is, consists of spirits, consists of souls. But now, why is, I might as well start with that, why is the human at the bottom, you know? None of us like being at the bottom of anything. So it seems almost a little bit insulting. I mean, why shouldn't, I don't know, why shouldn't, alligators be at the bottom, but not us. Because when they are at the bottom, and then you get close to them, they'll get you very soon at the bottom. You know, I haven't run away from them, but I've been at uncomfortably close contact to them in Florida and other places. You got to watch out for those babies. You know, the Egyptians, now of course I diverge, the Egyptians had many gods, and the gods had all animal forms, in addition to something human-like form. And Mercury, with the Roman Mercury, the Greek Hermes, his animal form was an ibis bird. It's a tropical bird with a great big beak, beautiful fellows. I have one statue at home, I should bring him here. And the issue being that the Egyptians were great observers. And so they looked and they saw that this long-legged bird was scurrying around, running around in the desert and going from this place to that, and they formed the conclusion that he was an embodiment of the principle of mobility of physical, mobility of mind. And for this reason, they combined Thoth, which was the Egyptian god's name, they combined Thoth with the Greek Hermes. And the Greeks didn't mind those things because the Greeks had an inordinately great and powerful reverence for the Egyptians. I mean, the great Plato himself, the divine Plato, wrote that all the goddesses, and the Greeks had many, all the goddesses were aspects of the Egyptian Isis. So, which is a statement that carries various implications, which, however, we will not explore right away. But this is the way the Greek gods and goddesses had their equivalent, what the French would call their pendant, in the Egyptian gods. And so this is of some relevance here, because in the let's say in the gnostic creation myth, all these various manifold, interesting beings, and they are beings. They are not just images. They are not. Even Jung's great word, archetypal image, is a great word, but it can't really describe what they are, because they are, archetypos in turn means an ancient image. This is an image that has always been there. It's very, very old because it has endured. And so the ancient images depict timeless, not just ancient, but timeless being and powers and potencies. So but the human way down here, and what's the human doing way down here, I would have very much preferred to be emanated into one of the upper regions. I could talk to angels and things like that, Now I can talk to them, but very seldom do they talk back. Over there they would talk back. In any event, all of that is slightly in jest, but let us say it seems, on the basis of the study of all of these symbols, that the more solid, the more material, the more non-celestial the reality becomes in the great structure of reality, the more it becomes as such, the more variety arises, and especially a dual variety. And this is very important. Gnostics, Manichaeans, all have been accused of being dualists because people didn't know what they were saying. And what the dualism means here, that here on this earth and on this Persian carpet, it's a good Persian carpet, by the way, it was a great gift when somebody gave it to us. But the things on this earth are dual. They have all kinds of dual aspects. And this is true of the beings here, especially ourselves. We are constituted in such a way that we embody and act as the host, sort of, to the interaction and reconciliation of vast dualities. If you look at the beautiful, because they're all beautifully executed, beautiful alchemical manuscripts, I promise you, I'm not going to go to the other side before we have an alchemical exhibition here, because we owe copies of some beautiful alchemical materials, and they're really inspiring. They're really worth looking at. You look at a good alchemical manuscript, whether in color or not, you look at it long enough and kind of quiet yourself a little bit. What happens is that you begin to transform yourself. That you begin to see the interaction, the dance of the sun and the moon, or whatever we may call them, salt and mercury and sulfur, Mercury is the third, dancing with each other in order to come together and to unite. So the characteristic of our nature as being dual has momentous consequences when we follow it through in the various spiritual systems and so forth. And I hope I'm not disappointing any of you or offending any of you, but one of the principal dualities that occur not only in human life but in the terrestrial region is the masculine and the feminine. You know, so whatever the social custom of the day may be, the masculine and the feminine are an incredibly powerful symbol. If you've ever been in love with somebody, then you may have experienced it. If you are going to be, then you will experience it. So these things are very important. Now, that being the case, we can mention that, and that is that when we're asking about, well, where did we come from? We came from the highest Godhead, if you want to call it that. The pleroma, the fullness, as it was called in Greek. And we have come to a place wherein the opposites interact with each other and where things are not as clear light as they are above at the top of the pyramid, but still extremely interesting and at times extremely inspiring. So now, as we went through that and some other aspects, in one of our other talks we went through the composite nature of the human, and now we are here with in the summary of Gnostic teachings, really what probably is the essence of this material, but we will try to go into various details, the relationship between divinity and humanity. Now, if you want to, you can't really compare the Gnostic God image, as Jung would call it, to the monotheistic God images, because they're much too different. You might almost say that now I'm going to be nasty, but I love to do that. That it's almost as if along came a fellow, or maybe woman, or maybe both of them, a great big one of those cake cutting knives, and took this strange composite being that was coming down from the fullness and cut it in half. And from then on, man, woman, and the alchemical elements and so on and so forth, and the fire and the water, which are the primary terrestrial dualities, and then comes the air and let's see now, which is the fourth, for heaven's sake? Fire, okay. I'm a fire sign, I'm a double fire sign astrological, and here I should forget. I didn't forget the fire, but I forgot the word fire. Okay, so anyway, so what happens now when we come to this sort of really the lowest level of manifestation, although if you're, I don't know if you're botanist or something of that sort, and you dig around for bugs and things, and you can see that there are very large number of creatures in this earth and on this earth, other than ourselves. Maybe they don't build computers, don't do various other things, but they are there. So this is really the area of the multiple realities, of multiplicity. So what we have here now what we need to take a look at, because this is crucial for our considerations, really crucial, is the relationship between divinity, which comes from its ultimate source, and humanity. What is that relationship? And now, once again, the ancients had some kind of a vision and concept of that, which was not, which is not to be disdained, and that is that they believed, and these are Greek words, no? In what they called apotheosis, and the word even survived in the Greek Orthodox Church to this day as theosis, and that it becomes the deification. So the human can undergo an apotheosis. And the well, I'm not that much of a, although I had a few years of Greek, I'm not that much of a ancient linguist in ancient languages, but the Greeks had, the Greeks were pretty doggone smart people. That's all there is to it. And I think it was one of the great recent philosophers, I think he's dead now, his name would come to me, he was the leading literary critic and then religious critic of America. His name will come to me. In any event, he said that we are all children of the Greeks. That's where we come from, spiritually speaking, and I think it's quite true, because there was just nothing to be discovered in the mind, in the psyche, which is after all a Greek word too, that the Greeks did not discover. Incredible, you know. They're the first psychologists, they're the first theologians, they are the first theosophists. And so the Greeks felt that there is such a thing as becoming or re-becoming divine, apotheosis, theosis. So, and you know what, the Greek Orthodox Church, which has really preserved in its own way, and sometimes in some secrecy, a lot of old gnostic type ideas. The Greek Orthodox Church calls to the becoming a saint, the sainthood, as theosis, deification. So when a human, now I'm in the Latin, when the homo becomes deus, there has been a transformation and elevation, and it's that transformation that became the ancestor of alchemy, with, for instance, with its transformational mythos. So this is what we have, an apotheosis and theosis. Now in the Roman Empire, which was a kind of, I have a great reverence for the Romans because my father was a passionate student of Roman history. I mean, we had books with ancient Roman pictures with, you know, reproductions of statuary and everything all over the house, and books describing Roman history. But you got to also remember that my native country, Hungary, was one of the extreme eastern extensions of the Roman Empire. It was called Pannonia, and it was a Roman province. It had its own proconsul, more or less where Budapest is now, And moreover, it had the Roman baths, because the Romans just loved their baths. Now, their baths, I believe, were not designed primarily for cleansing, as they are for us, but they were designed to keep you happy and keep you well. And for this, the Romans searched out natural springs with all kinds of chemicals and bubbles in them. So they're all over Europe. So the Romans had a little bit of a different take on all of this. They said that, the more what the Greeks would have called demigods or demigoddesses, that humans could, in various ways, change into the kingdom of the gods. Now, you may recall now I am trying to recall something, and then I say that you may recall the I, Claudius, which I think was originally a book by the great poet and mythologist Robert Graves. Very interesting gentleman. In any event, Robert, like in I, Claudius, you may or may not recall that particular scene. After there were a lot of them. There is the old matriarch, who is the mother of Caesar Augustus, and so she's talking to her grandson, who is Claudius, and she says, "Oh, grandson," I mean, I don't know if I can mimic it completely, but she says, "Oh, grandson, I so much would like to become a goddess. You are the emperor, can't you do something about it?" And he says, "Oh, well, grandmother, we'll do something about it." Because the emperor could then proclaim somebody a god or a goddess. So there's a kind of a politicization of apotheosis. But I say the Romans still had it also. So now the gods of Rome were, for the most part, political gods, and then came the great spoiler, who spoiled everything. I'm using that ironically, Christianity. So what was Christianity going to do with this thing? You still had to refer to the emperor as a god, and so on and so forth, So what were the Christians going to do with this? Well, they did, as time went on, they did various things, and what Christianity tried to do, and I am sorry to confess that often somewhat unsuccessfully, really, was a reconciliation of monotheism and polytheism because they inherited the very rigid monotheism from the Jews. I mean, the Hear, Israel, the Lord our God is one. Not even anything else but one. Shema Yisrael Adonai Eloheinu Adonai Echad. So the oneness is an extremely important feature. So they couldn't quite do away with it because, after all, as I like to point out to anti-Semites, guys, Jesus Christ was a Jew. And not only he, but all the holy apostles were Jews. So let's kind of cut it with this putting down the Jews, because you know what? If you think you're a Christian, there's some very important people in your faith that come from there. And for that matter, Islam recognizes Jesus Christ as a great prophet. So, let's say the recognition of this now we are moving slowly toward the topic of this evening, namely that of the messengers of God, that the outstanding, heroically virtuous people who then came to be known as saints in Christendom, that these saints were the people, obviously of the Christians when possible, although not always. For a heck of a long time, I think for as long as the Renaissance, the Christian Church, the Vatican, the cardinals, the church councils were trying to decide whether they could proclaim Plato a saint. And Plato, of course, way before the Christian era. And I wish they had done so, but what the heck. In any way, it means a hero of the mind, a hero of the spirit. That was the beginning of the concept of sainthood. And what is that sainthood and some other aspects that are still present in Christianity? The teaching about the archangels, various other great celestial beings, but primarily known as archangels and so forth, again, is an attempt to reconcile the polytheism of the Greeks and the Romans and the Egyptians with the monotheism of the Jews. And even the Prophet Muhammad, there is so much talk now about Islam, the Prophet Muhammad tried desperately to, Allah is one, but on the other hand, depending on also which Islamic group, Allah has helpers. Allah has holy people who have risen to a very high status. One of them, his daughter Fatima, and all the great religious leaders and the kings even today. I prefer the kings of Islam, all descendants of the Prophet Muhammad. Why? Because by way of being the descendants of his daughter, they carry something holy within them. The feminine passed on something holy to them. Now, of course, at the same time, they probably have a harem of women whom they maybe don't treat all that well, I don't know. But the main thing is that something holy is there and something passes there. And these are the, let's say, the analogues, distant historical analogues of the Roman empress who wanted to be made a goddess. Come on, grandson, really make me. I so much would like to become a goddess. Oh yes, grandmother, we can do that. Yeah, but so these are elements, important elements. So Christianity then tried to be a reconciliation of monotheism and polytheism in an acceptable way, and it wasn't very successful, although in some cases it was. Now, so Christianity had to bring in the monotheistic element somehow, and so the monotheistic element now became combined with a kind of quasi-polytheistic element, because what do you find in, let's say, the God image, as Jung called it, the God concept of Christianity? you find God's Son, which sometimes, I think, by the less sensitive and the less informed, is often imagined as being Jehovah's Son, but he has a human mother. Not the most orthodox Greek, Syrian, whatever you want to, not the most orthodox ever stated or implied that the Blessed Virgin Mary was not human. In fact, that is one of her principal virtues. She is, however, the Theotokos, the one who gives birth to a God. She is the mother of God. And that in itself, again, indicates that effort to put together the polytheistic pantheon with a monotheistic concept, because if the Son of God, the God, can have a human mother, you see these two coming together. And it was never considered a heresy. In fact, your average Greek or Greek priest or Greek icon picture will always say, Theotokos, the mother of God. So the very concept of motherhood, once again, very important, because it's a very important symbol of humanity and of feminine humanity, and therefore it needs to be considered very seriously. And let's say there are other curious things far less known and often found in Gnostic or Gnosticizing sources, which point toward this curious situation. For instance, Saint Thomas the Apostle, to whom is ascribed the Gospel of Thomas, the Acts of Thomas, and so forth. Thomas was regarded, Elaine Pagels, who is the great oracle of Gnostic writings, Elaine Pagels says so, and others say so. He was called Thomas the Twin, because he was regarded as the twin brother of Jesus. Now, not necessarily a physical twin brother. You don't have two baby Jesuses in the creche at Christmas, but a spiritual brother. How could Thomas, a human Jewish gentleman, how could he become the twin brother of Jesus spiritually? Jesus says to him in the Gospel of Thomas, you don't need some of this, because you are different. And what I have measured out to you, he measures out to him the fire. And that's why he tells Jesus in the Gospel of Thomas you know what, Tommy boy, I'm in a very weird mood. So Thomas, you know what you should make the other apostles understand, that you are different. I have given you something else. And otherwise they are going to take up stones and throw them at you, which was a favorite execution in Old Testamentary times. So all of these are the indications that there are strange crossovers from the human to the divine, from the divine to the human, right with the birth of Jesus, of course, and that is not denied anywhere. But in other ways. So Thomas as the twin, if not anything else, the twin of Jesus. And what occurs at the crucifixion? which of course is a controversial event in theology, biblical theology. What occurs at the crucifixion is that the God dies. Now, that's very un-Greek, because the title of the gods was the immortals, the immortal gods. Now, here is a God who dies. But on the other hand, the death of Jesus Christ on the cross was never understood in an unambiguous way. Now you tell that to your fundamentalist friends, and they are going to pick up stones and throw them at him. And they know how. They learned it from the old ones. But the issue being that there are some scriptures that were regarded quite authentic at one time. The Acts of John primarily, and Acts of Thomas, which indicate that there was something weird about the crucifixion. It was, well, of course, the fundamentalist Christian would say that too is something weird, because to kill the God is certainly a weird act. But John sees Jesus while the crucifixion is going on in the Acts of John. And Jesus appears to him in a cave on a mountain, from whence John is observing the crucifixion scene down below. And the spectral, spiritual Jesus says to him, "John, John, why are you crying? Why are you so despondent?" He says, "I am not down there. I am here." And then he grows to the statue of, he grows as big as a mountain, stretches out his arms, and he seems crucified on the four directions of the universe and shines like the sun, and he looks down. This is me. This is what you have to see, John. So now, what is all this all about? And yet, we don't really have any definitive proof that the Gnostics denied the crucifixion. No, in fact, it appears in various things. The only thing that makes sense, but a lot of things in sacred scripture don't make sense, I'm sure we'll agree. The only thing that makes sense is that they regarded the passion of the Lord as a great symbolic act, and one that needs to be, if at all possible, it's not possible for everyone, to be internalized for the individual human. In other words, as a poet said, I can't remember the poetry, it's a British poet who had a famous playwright as his brother. I will probably remember toward the end. And he has a poem wherein one of the verses ends, "God in man is crucified." You want to see the cross? Here it is. You see. So all of this is very, very weird and very, very mysterious. But it works together with the proposition which I'm trying to propound today, that from a Gnostic point of view, from the point of view of the Gnostic and the esoteric tradition, the divine and the human come together in a particularly powerful and actually not infrequent way in the world history, in the beings whom some of the writers have referred to as the messengers of light. Because what is according to most Orthodox theology, Roman Catholic, Greek, fundamentalist, whatever, Jesus is both God and man. They had to have a whole church council yelling at each other for hours that established that. Council of Chalcedon, I think, one of them. So, God and man. But God in man is crucified. Why? So the divine comes down into the human and is sort of locked up there. I have been talking about this in various ways before. But on the other hand, perhaps in order to dramatize this, to really bring it home and really make it very real to humans, it is manifest in the phenomenon of great transcendental beings who come to earth and who, for all intents and purposes, become human. And certainly the example of Jesus is one of them, but it's not the only one. In fact, in a very, very early Gnostic scriptures, there is the saying made that these are the great embodiments of it's not the same words, but of the Logos who have come. And they were Zarathustra, Buddha, Jesus. They were the great ones. Did I miss one? Mani, after Jesus. Because Jesus had promised that somebody would come after him. And this has caused all kinds of trouble in the Christian church because people popped up here and there. Oh, I'm Jesus. Oh, really? And things of that sort. And then later on, in the famous statement of the prophet Mani himself, who said that the great religious traditions were really here because they were led by pure leaders. And all the religious traditions that were led by pure leaders were true religions. They were good. They were here in order to help humanity. This was, and I'll say something about Mani later on. But anyway, the concept is this. We already have encountered it in poetic and metaphorical form not very long ago in the Hymn of the Pearl, that a being, a spiritual being from on high, in the high household of the divine, of the Pleroma, is sent down to earth. Is sent down to earth in order to accomplish something. Where in the Hymn of the Pearl something very mysterious, because it would seem to me all this traveling through the aeons and having to leave your beautiful aura, if you want to call it that, behind and everything, and get down here and eat bad food, which then makes you sick. These are all motives in the Hymn of the Pearl. That in order to do that, this must be a momentous occasion. In the Hymn of the Pearl, is so poetically just explained that there is a treasure, there is a pearl. That we went through all of this. It's held by a noisy, snorting serpent, and this treasure has to be taken by the celestial visitor and taken back to heaven. Obviously, symbolic statements. But the story, somebody comes from outside. In fact, some of the great Gnostic scholars use that very term, from outside. And it's very important, I think, in our secularistic era. Because people are very easily exclaiming, oh, Buddha, well, he was just a North Indian Maharaja's son, So he was fully human, he didn't come from outside. But if you look into the, particularly Vajrayana teachings and so forth, then you will see that there are, with every Buddha who, like Gautama, becomes a Buddha here, there is a whole series of Buddha beings that are involved in that incarnation. And there are celestial Buddhas. And there are sort of semi-human Buddhas. And finally there was this, in Sanskrit is called Manushi Buddha, a human Buddha. So in order for a human Buddha to appear on earth, there has to be a sort of mysterious incarnation-like sequence of Buddha beings that are in the heavens who come one station, second station, third station, finally the human station. So what happened according to, let's say, what was called esoteric Buddhism often, what happened was that at the time when Gautama sat under the tree, you know, the Indians are so precise about everything. Somebody called them spiritual bookkeepers, the people from India, because they like to categorize it. It's one thing, the other thing. You have it in Theosophy too, the 7 principles. In any event, that this Buddha became a Buddha because he was overshadowed or incarnated, or whatever word you want to be, by celestial Buddhas and celestial Bodhisattvas. And then finally there was the human Buddha sitting under the tree. He was able to do what he did because he was more than a peer. He was not just the Maharaja's son. The Maharaja's son was the physical body, but he was the expression, the one to receive the celestial Buddhas who would then work through him. And this concept has various different varieties, but you have it even, I mean, the Dalai Lamas and the Panchen Lamas are similarly overshadowings of a higher power. You know, and there is, in one of the movies about the Dalai Lama, there were 2, I forget which one it was, somebody will probably tell me. In one of the movies, when the present, His Holiness the 14th Dalai Lama, fleeing from the red devils out of Tibet, when he arrives at the Indian border, there's an Indian border guard or military officer there. His military officer, a Hindu, most likely, or maybe a Muslim. And he asks the Dalai Lama, he says, "You are the Dalai Lama?" "Yes." And he says, "Are you the Buddha?" And the Dalai Lama said, "Just like the moon is reflected in the water, so I am the reflection of the Buddha." That's mysterious. And yet, you know, if we had no reflections, what kind of human beings would we be? The people would run away from us. In the Middle East, people said there is only one being that you may encounter who doesn't have a shadow. It's the devil. It's the devil. The devil has no shadow because he is the shadow. And there's quite a nice medieval German, it's a long ballad, poem about this. And this word is Peter Schlemihl, der Mann ohne Schatten. Peter Schlemihl, he was a Schlemihl probably. Peter Schlemihl, the man without a shadow. So there was this guy who was wandering around, and he was poor and he was dissatisfied and all that. And so he encountered the devil. Because the devil was imagined as walking around the streets. You know what? When I walk down some of our streets, I wonder whether those times have come back. And there seems to be a lot of demons around. In any event, and that being the case, when he walked around on earth, this was the one problem, that people recognized him because he didn't cast a shadow. So, what is the poor devil going to do? Well, this devil went up to Peter Schlemihl, and he said, look, Peter, you have a shadow and I don't, okay? Why don't I buy you a shadow? The devil is a great businessman, you know. Why don't I buy you a shadow, and then I will have a shadow and I won't suffer from that. You have never missed your shadow. Did anybody bother you because you didn't cast a shadow? So let's do this transaction. Peter Schlemihl sells his shadow to the devil, and then he goes through life and he finds out all the occasions, important occasions in all kinds of ways, which require him to have a shadow, but he doesn't have one. So finally, in desperation, he seeks out the devil again and says, oh, for heaven's sakes, devil, I want to buy back my shadow. And I think in the end of it, he buys it back. So that is one of these other interesting dualities. But what we have here is that there are really the people who are, at least probably psychologically, without a shadow. And they are the messengers that's why they are called messengers of the light. They are all light. Now, light, of course, is again a metaphor. I'm not talking electric light. Otherwise, Thomas Alva Edison would have been an avatar, you know. And maybe he was. Listen, he was a member of the Theosophical Society. He was a great occultist. He was constructing a machine to converse with the dead toward the end of his life. Whether he ever conversed, I don't know, but he was working on the machine. Interesting, very interesting man. In any event, man of light. And it says in the Gnostic Gospel, I think it's in Thomas also, in a man of light, there is light. He lights up the whole world. When he does not shine, everything is in darkness. I am transposing it a little bit. So this is an important statement, because we obviously are not talking about physical light here, but we are talking about the light that in the East, or at least, I think it's a bad translation, to translate bodhi as enlightenment. I knew some scholars whom I respect, who said that Buddha does not mean the enlightened one, but that it means the awakened one. Well, in whom the man of light awakened. How about that? And I don't have any particular investment in either of them. But in any way, there are people who come with a predisposition to be great spiritual lights in the world. And this is the one whom the Gnostics mention, even though they had great teachers. I mean, oh my gosh, I would give everything to be in the presence of somebody like Valentinus or Basilides. I mean, these were true wise men, equals of Plato and Aristotle and so forth. But the issue being that there are people who come to this world who are messengers of the light, embodiments of the light, and who therefore in various ways facilitate. Now, if we want to use that term again, I was just putting it down. They are here to facilitate the enlightenment of the world and of all beings in it. So, what does this mean in practical terms? No. We are an egotistical lot. I mean, we know that. I recognize it in myself, and I recognize it doubly in others. But we are an egotistical lot, and we say, well, you know, we can pull this off. We can be so wise and so good and so accomplished that when people learn that from us, we have transformed the world. It's sort of an ancient form, or in the more religious form of modern idiocies, idiocies from people like Karl Marx and Friedrich Engels and Mao Zedong and Adolf Hitler and Benito Mussolini and others. We know what's to be done here, and we are going to make everybody rich, everybody happy, and it's going to be just glorious. And you know what? Turn the time machine a little bit around, turn it around maybe about 25, 30, 40 years, 50 years, and you see that what they brought was nothing but misery, suffering, greater poverty than ever, concentration camps. I don't need to outline them all to you. Gulag Archipelago, Auschwitz. Look at this. They thought that they are men of light. They thought that going to make everything better. They made everything worse. Because they were not real people of light. And might be interesting to throw in a little other item here. Why were they not men of light, or people of light, if you want to get away from the patriarchy, you know? But let's say, why would this be? Why would they misfire like this? Well, you know, primarily because what they resorted to, what they came from. Well, in vernacular English, we even now use the term, oh yeah, he comes from that, he comes from something, you know. He comes from the study of history, or he comes from jazz music, or whatever. Well, they came from a different, quote, place than the men of light whom we are speaking about. They came from transcendence. And it was this transcendental essentiality that they brought to earth, and that they were able to communicate and stimulate in others. And that is why people like Zarathustra, of course, the great Persian prophet who founded the Zoroastrian, or in India it's called now the Parsi religion, Zarathustra, Buddha, Jesus, and then ultimately the Persian prophet Mani. What did they do? Why were they men of light rather than others? Theoretically, we are all men and women of light. We come from the light. Every once in a while we even get a glimpse of it, heavens help us, you know, and so forth. But how is that? Why is that? Well, they were very largely because they were beings who had either never lost the light, or who had, in their celestial regions or in previous lives, or I don't know what, they have recovered their light. And therefore they are there. You know, I sometimes comes to me like a metaphor in church when the somebody with us right now, it's our deacon, goes and lights the various candles on the altar and behind the altar. This is what the man of light does. Here are the people, we are all with our wicks sticking out. And I don't get the conclusion that makes us wicked. Okay, puns are important. In any event, there we are. And along comes the man of light, and he lights up this one, he lights up that one, he lights up the third one, he lights up the fourth one. So that is, apparently there needs to be a, what to call it, a holy passing on of transcendental light. And that is very much part of the guru concept of India, of the incarnating lamas in Tibet and so forth. These are the people who are able to pass on light to others. Of course, they have to pass it on to people who want it. And maybe even some worthiness involved. Although, let's put it that way, somebody who was important to me, needless to say, once said to me when an important event was about to take place in my life. And I asked him, I said, am I worthy? And he looked at me with fire in his eyes and he said, no one is ever worthy of this. But it still must be that some receive it. This again, the spiritual life, the life that the esoteric tradition teaches, is not a business deal with Jehovah. Oh yes, Jehovah, I'm not going to seduce the neighbor's wife, and then you are going to be good to me and I'll make a lot of money, or I don't know what else I'm going to make, but I'll get rewarded for being good. But being good is not something that should be rewarded. Being good should be just something that exists. And maybe you can cultivate it more, and today you're good and tomorrow you'll be better. But it's not a deal. It's not a transaction. It is something that happens. And that is why in various traditions we have the different events wherein a man of light, like Jesus, certainly like Gautama the Buddha, Zarathustra, comes up to somebody and he says, come here. And now I'm giving you the light. Zoom! And then the other one becomes a man of light also. But the light that the man of light carries comes from elsewhere. And this is where we are in trouble. Because we have, I don't want to rant and rave now, although it's fun, it's not that you are here passing on the light to others and things like that. It's a completely different situation. It was said, these things all have inner meaning. It was said, for instance, that Buddha had a radiance, an aura of many colors. You know what? The Buddhists like to keep track of things. They still know the colors that were in the aura of the Buddha, and they have become the Buddhist flag. And when I taught at a Buddhist college, the Buddhist flag always flew over our college. And you know who designed the Buddhist flag? An American Yankee from Connecticut. He was born in Jersey at Colonel Olcott. Yeah, but his family was from Hartford, Connecticut. by the name of Henry Steele Olcott, who was the founder president of the Theosophical Society. And I don't mean to build up I have known enough theosophies to know that some of them are just as stupid as other people. Not me, of course, but others. So, but it is true. That's the kind of light that the Buddha sheds. In all the rainbows of the color there around him, and that his radiance, his aura, so the Buddhists say, extended, I don't know how many, people in India got everything precisely done, so I don't know, very great distance from him. When he was walking, it would extend way over there. And anybody who walked in his light, in his rainbow light, in his aura, has received a big jolt in his enlightenment. Again, you can see that those are symbols, things like that, but didn't Goethe say in the last stanza of the Faust Part 2, all things transitory but as symbols are meant, or in German, alles Vergängliche ist nur ein Gleichnis. So, the world is full of symbols. The world is full of light. And the part of the reason for that it is there is that from time to time there appear people on earth who contribute to the opening of that light, to the work of that light, and to its success in various places. So you also have to remember, the concept is not that different. You also have to remember that the word angel, probably, angelos in Greek, means messenger. Messenger. What in German we call ein Bote, somebody who is sent. Because like the Archangel Gabriel who brings the news to the Blessed Virgin Mary about the coming of Christ and so forth, or Saint Raphael who brings the message that the young man's eyes can be healed and so forth. These are all messages that they bring. And now, as we are moving along, we need to perhaps look more or less in conclusion to another issue within all of this, and that is that how can a man of light pass on the light to someone who is not a man of light, or not a woman of light, not a child of light? How can this happen? Does he bring a sort of Aladdin's lamp from the heaven, and he comes to somebody and says, hey, I brought you light? Well, of course, that's burlesquing the situation. Because the one who receives the light has some light already. And the man of light, the messenger of light, makes that light burn more brightly until it takes over and until it enlightens the entire person. It is what is in you already that is destined to grow and destined to become the man of light. When in him there is light, and he enlightens the whole world. That it is. When you don't recognize that, you know what? You can know everything about computers, you can know everything about atomic sciences, you don't know anything. Because that's the only thing, the greatest thing and the only thing worth knowing. Knowing that the human is more than human. Menschliches allzu menschliches, as Goethe called it. Human all too human. But at the back of that all too human, there lies a transcendental potential. There is something that can grow into a flame that will devour the darkness, that will put the shadows to flight, and that will reconnect that little light that has been in us all these aeons, having grown so big, reconnected with the greater light. And that is the redemption, that is salvation, that is enlightenment. That is what rescues us. The rescue is done by the light within us, as nourished and enkindled and made great larger by the messengers of light. It's really quite simple. It's really quite simple. But just because it's simple, that doesn't mean that it's easy. But if you cultivate within yourself the desire, the longing, the reaching out for more light. You know, in many esoteric orders, that is the way that you ask for a higher initiation. You go to the Lodge Master and you ask for more light. And once again, the great poet Johann Wolfgang von Goethe, when he was dying, those were his last words: Licht, mehr Licht, light, more light. So there is a strange process here, and it is really a process wherein we can receive and maybe in due course of time extend the greatest help to others. Because when we receive the light, when that light grows in us, when we let our light shine as the originally, I think, biblical statement has it, then we have done more for this world than any politician, than any scientist, than any propagandist, anybody. Maybe certain disciplines in the arts that really bring beauty are an avenue, because they speak to that deepest thing within us. But whatever may bring it to us, that is what is important. So there come beings from a greater reality who are filled with light and who can help our light and the light of others, and by doing that primarily, they will light up the whole world. The darkness recedes, the shadows vanish, and there is nothing but light, light, and light again. May that day come soon. Thank you very much.